Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net. The conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line today with Deb Gordills. I'm so really pleased that many of you have stuck around to listen to my political talk show here out of Chicago, Illinois. Of course, there's always a lot to talk about when it involves Chicago, one of the largest cities in America. I want to start with local news here in Chicago. Yesterday, Cinco de Mayo. So for those of you that I missed on saying Happy Cinco de Mayo, I hope you enjoyed it. I attended two Republican events. One was the Chairman's RNHA, which is the Illinois Republican National Hispanic Assembly Cinco de Mayo celebration in Wrigleyville. And it was great to see a couple of chairmen from the downstate chapter in Southern Illinois, Gloria Campos, who was up here for another event that the Republican National Hispanic Assembly co-hosted with the Illinois Republican Party for Evelyn Sanguinetti. For those of you who don't know, Evelyn Sanguinetti is half Cuban and half Ecuadorian. What a great mix. She's a beautiful lady. With just a lot of talent and energy, just bilingual. She's an attorney, speaks both Spanish and English perfectly. Just a real joy. I just really enjoyed seeing her. And she's someone that you'll respect when you meet and speak with, and then you want to hug her because you find her passion right after that. So that's she's just a dynamite lady. So all the best to the Rauner Evelyn team as they gear up here for the November elections for the governor's seat in Illinois. So the Cinco de Mayo was well-attended celebration. Jack Dorgan gave a speech, and there were candidates who were running for office who were introduced there. And that kind of segues us into the candidates running for office. So you have numerous groups in Chicago and in Cook County, so outside the city, and throughout the state who are running candidates. But especially in Chicago, it's an interesting mix because Chicago is traditionally a very heavy Democrat-leaning city. And it's not that it's a heavy Democrat-leaning city, it's that it's a city of Chicago produces many Democrat votes. We already know through a research group out of Kansas City, a study was done on how many votes the Democrat Party was able to get in Chicago and how many registered voters there were in each of the zip codes in the city of Chicago. And I think I mentioned this on my show before. So this research group took the entire voter list from the Board of Elections of everyone who was registered to vote and dropped it into zip codes throughout the state of Illinois, especially concentrating in Chicago. And then they went to the census that the federal agency recently had, dropped those census figures into the zip codes, and lo and behold, the city of Chicago does produce more voters that are Democrat, but they're not all alive and they're not all real, because the study showed that in just 6 of the 15, a dozen or 20 zip codes in Chicago, Illinois alone, just 6 on the south side of Chicago produced over 150,000 more registered voters than the census said was 18 years or older living in those zip codes. So 2 things here. One, the Board of Elections in Chicago wants us to believe that the south side of Chicago in 6 different zip codes has 100% perfect voter registration. That means that every single 18-year-old and over person on the south side of Chicago is an active registered voter with the Board of Elections. That's impossible. You don't even get those kind of numbers anywhere else in the city, and you're going to find that in these particular zip codes. And then on top of that, they each have another 10 to 12 to 13,000 more 18-year-olds that the census was unable to find or locate in those communities who are registered voters. Now, that's either 150,000 dead people or 150,000 non-citizens of the state of Illinois. But those people don't exist. Let's just say, for the sake of arguing, that the census people were wrong and these numbers are off a bit. That still doesn't explain 150,000. They can't be off that high. So a lot of questions the Chicago Board of Elections and the State Board of Elections needs to answer in reference to these voter rolls. Now, if you look online about these voter rolls being inflated, you'll get this response that the city doesn't have enough money to clean up the voter rolls. That means it would take some time for the Board of Elections to go and kick out all the voters and to have a system. There is no mechanism in place at the Board of Elections to find out if a registered voter who's at the Board of Elections registered to vote in their system either died, aged out, moved. There's no mechanism in place. It's just a series of names. I personally have been at the Board of Elections looking at petition sheets when Republicans want to run for office, and the Democrat-controlled Board of Elections will look on the machine. I've sat there with them, and I said, okay, here is a signature on this petition sheet, and we can't find where this person is registered to vote. So we say eliminate that vote. And if it is a Democrat candidate who needs the signature, they'll allow it even if it's not on the system. Even if it's nowhere to be found, they'll say, it's okay, we can't take it out, so it's good. If it's a Republican running for office, the Board of Elections will say, we can't find it, that's not a valid signature, that's tossed out. So, you know, it is so crooked, it almost borders on criminal activity at the Board of Elections, and we need to eliminate the Board of Elections as it exists today. A complete overhaul would be to get rid of everything and everyone that's in there. And a lot of states do. I think there's 48 other states in America that no longer have a system like we have in Chicago, Cook County. And the reason we keep this system in Chicago, Cook County is because you can manipulate it. And I have personally, and I can bring you 20, 30 other people who will say the same thing. And you could go down there yourself and go through the list. There is something very wrong with a Board of Elections that can decide who the next governor is going to be, who the next state representative is going to be, who's going to run against other candidates and who's not. All of this power is held at the Board of Elections. And the Chicago Board of Elections handles 120 municipalities. If we can't trust them to just figure out who the voters are, why should we trust them on tabulating the votes? They're going to decide who the next governor is going to be in Illinois, not you or I. I'm not saying this so that you don't go out and vote. Please, you got to go out and vote. There's so much fraudulent activity going on that the only way we can trump the fraudulent activity is if more than 25% of you come out to vote. So right now, for every 100 people, only 25 are getting out. We need to have like 100% of you get out of your seats and go there and go to vote. Very, very important. So I can't help but always talk about the vote on my shows. And for those of you who have been listening to me for a while, it's always about let's reform the voting process in Chicago, in the state of Illinois, in the entire country. We need voter IDs. Yesterday's show was all about voter IDs. We need voter IDs. Very, very important. If Mexico has a fingerprinted photograph, special identification card that is strictly for voting, that expires after 3 years, it's free to everybody, that you have to bring in tons of documents to validate that that's you and that you personally live there. For God's sakes, why can't we do it? If the country of Mexico can do it, we can do it. So we need to get on it because the integrity of our vote is so important. I mean, we're already a joke across the country in terms of what they think about what we're doing. And now with the vote fraud, no voter ID, I mean, we need to step up our profile image here a bit nationally and get things in order. So staying on the Chicago topic, red light cameras, red light cameras. So yesterday's news, Channel 7, Ben Bradley, ABC, was all over Rahm Emanuel's driving detail team. They were speeding, going through red lights speeding. They were all caught on camera. They were not stopping when they were supposed to. So they had a ton of violations, and they get dismissed. Really? Do you think any one of us would be able to get our tickets dismissed just like that? I mean, they were caught on tape. Isn't that what when you get that thing in the mail for speeding and it being caught by the camera lights or red light cameras or speeding cameras, that's it. You know, there's not very many grounds for you to get off of it on. You're on the tape, and it's obvious that you violated that law. So you have to pay the fine, pay that ticket, or they're going to impound your car after they boot it, and then they keep your car, or you get jail time. You just can't blow this stuff off. But apparently, the mayor's team, he's not accountable. None of them are accountable. They didn't have to pay. They didn't have to explain. They all became dismissed. So, you know what? Take down the cameras. Because if you don't have to follow the camera rules on speeding and red lights, then none of us should have to. And you got caught. Okay, you do it, and we do it. But yet you get off when you go to court, and we don't get off. I'm just saying, make it fair. I understand speeding happens. I know. Sometimes you got to get, in a hurry to get your kids to school. But speeding and passing red lights is never excusable. I don't care who you are. I mean, I could see catching a close yellow, but a red could really kill somebody. So that's just crazy and insane violation there. So anyway, red light cameras, the city officials don't have to follow them, yet all of us are being monitored, viewed, followed, ticketed, impounded. This is a complete violation of our privacy. And now, don't forget the privacy issue. They don't have to follow it. If they don't have to follow it, then they shouldn't be putting it on us. So that's what I have to say about the red light cameras. Scott Davis, the 44th Ward Republican committeeman, has been following up on the cameras. The Campaign for Liberty is trying to get the cameras taken down. I hear a couple of aldermen are now standing up and saying maybe the cameras are not a good idea. So there's a lot to talk about here in the upcoming shows about red light cameras and speed cameras. So before we wrap this up and go to a commercial and get ready, I want to sort of let you know that the following programming are going to be recorded programmings that we have done in the past. We carried the show outside of Chicago, about 200 segments, and we didn't get a lot of those tapes. So they were really good interviews, really good shows. We're trying to put them into our Now Chicago tape so that we can get them up on the YouTube for you so that you can follow the shows and catch the shows you missed. I hope you're enjoying our program. This is Deb Gordills, and I'll be back with you right after these commercials.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net. The conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Crazy is because we have an election coming up, and we work so hard. Everybody works so hard on trying to get their candidates to get elected, on trying to get good people from the community, within the community, to run for races. This is so important that each community is represented with its own people. And then comes along the reality that we're going to be elected, and we're going to hold an election within an environment that is filled with fraud. And so somebody once said, well, Deb, mention the fraud because, you talk about the fraud. Tell me where it's stolen. Okay, let's start with number one. Number one, if you don't show a voter ID, you can be anyone off a name list. If somebody wants to win, somebody's involved politically, all of you know that guy in Cook County who knocks on your door and tells you he's with the alderman. And he tells you he's with the ward. And he tells you he's with the candidate and tells you he wants you to know that if you need anything to call the alderman's office. He wants you to know that the alderman wants to know that he's got your support. You guys know that guy. And what he's practically telling you is to tell him that you're going to support him so that he knows. And you'd be a dummy or an idiot to say, no, I'm not, because you're probably not going to get your garbage thrown out. And you'll probably, I don't know, get like 10 building permit violations coming to your house from city inspectors because there's proof that they've done that. So for this guy on this last video, Mr. who doesn't know anything, yeah, I can bring you people that will tell you my business was shut down because I did not support the established candidate by the established Democrat Party. So I can bring you people that will tell you that they will swear that the Democratic Party gave them building violations, that their building was knocked down, that their businesses was taken away, that they were told they were going to lose it by the building inspectors. So this is like city workers controlled by the Democrat Party, who are the ward bosses in each ward, who come and knock on your door and ask you how you're voting. That's all part of the corruption and the vote fraud. And then everybody gets a voter card. You don't even have to show ID. So you can apply for this Mickey Mouse, do nothing, monopoly type Illinois voter registration paper, because it's just a little card paper. You could make a photocopy of it on with a good inkjet projector. But they don't even ask you for that. They don't even ask you for an ID. And you don't even have to have any proof or verify if you go and mail for a card. So they got this whole system already of you don't know who the hell the people are. I know a guy who said to me, Debbie, I voted for $10 15 times. I made $150 in the 33rd ward. That's under Dick Mel, Blagojevich's father-in-law. Go figure. And this guy told me he voted 15 times using other people's names because the voter rolls are not cleaned up. In other words, they're not updated. So if you filled out a voter registration card 10 years ago in some place, and then you filled it out in another place, because you moved 3 times in those 10 years, your voter roll is not taken out. Your ballot is not taken out. It is left over there. And you know that guy who knocks on your door? He knows that it's there. He knows who left that block, who moved. But because David Orr, the Cook County clerk in this Democrat-run Cook County, doesn't take it out, every ward and all 50 neighborhoods in Chicago get to have all these extra ballots that belong to people who moved. Who knows where? Nobody's done the research. Nobody's checked. And those voters are completely ignorant that this is happening to their ballot. So their ballot is sitting there. So they know, the precinct captains know whose ballots are sitting there. The election judge, both the Republican and the Democrat are really solid Democrats in most cases until recently when we ran a project that I spearheaded with committeemen asking them to get rid of these election judges, and thank God they've ran with it. And now the Cook County clerk and Defend the Vote, Sharon Maroney, are in on it. And so they're getting rid of more and more election judges. That's why we need good people like you, listeners, to go and sign up to get paid to become a Republican election judge, because we don't have any. Don't bother trying to become a Democrat election judge, because chances are the Democrats there already have all their own people and they've been there for like 15, 20 years. You ever notice when you go to vote, it's that same person at that election place with the same badge, knowing all of them? You're going to tell me she doesn't remember who comes in and who doesn't come in? The Democrats want low numbers. And the Democrats will tell you that the Republicans do. The Republicans have zero benefit. Damn it, if the Republican Party was controlling the voter fraud in the state of Illinois, don't you think they'd be running the state? Don't you think Madigan would have been the hell out of there? Don't you think Daley wouldn't have been the mayor for 25 years if the Republicans had any clout with the mayor, with the votes? I mean, what a joke. To say the Republicans control any of the vote process in Illinois is a big joke, because look at everybody who you have. Anyway, let's get back to how do you steal the vote. So it starts right as basic as the ID card. And then you move from the ID card to actually going to vote with nothing. And if somebody pays this guy, I'm sure this guy wasn't the only person that was paid for going out. All he had to do was come back with the receipt. You know, after you vote, you get the receipt. Well, he would trade it in for $15. And he'd make, if he'd do that like in 10 places, he'd say, give me another name, another place, and there he'd go, and he'd show up there, and it was an easy peasy. This guy had no reason to lie to me and tell me that this was going on. I knew that this was going on. I didn't personally know anybody who was involved in the process until we met this guy out there. So I also know that the electronic machines are fixed. They're manipulated, and it's easy to take your vote away from you on an electronic machine. Even though they give you a receipt, you can manipulate those votes. You can change the numbers just like you can on any other machine, just like you can on your laptop, the way you can control your PC. They can control the electronic voting machine. So stay off the electronic voting machine. Do not use it. It doesn't even click sometimes on the right person. We heard over and over again how it would click to Obama and then it would click to Romney. The machine is used to steal votes. And the tabulation part of it. It's owned by a communist country. I mean, really, in Cook County, they buy this kind. It was brokered under Daley. It was sold to them by some guy named Victor Reyes, who works with Madigan still today. And I don't know, maybe he had part ownership or some kind of interest in this company. But anyway, the software today in Cook County that's used for the electronic voting machines is still owned by the Chavez family of Venezuela. So this is crazy. So there are no votes counted. You know what? We can't find an electronic voting machine made in America. We have to go to a communist country to get it. I mean, how stupid and dumb do they think we are? Apparently, a lot. So many ways that they can steal the vote. Even if they do it by paper ballot, they could have somebody in and pull that ballot. And, you know, at the end of the day, when they close that voting place at 7 o'clock, who's in there? You have the precinct captains, who are the poll watchers for the Democrat ward in there. You have the Democrat election judge in there. You have the Republican election judge who's just wearing a badge that says he's a Republican. He is related or friends, and he has been handpicked by the Democrat ward there. So he's really a Democrat. There's nobody sitting in there except for the people who benefit out of fixing that election. There's a cement company in the 33rd Ward who went ahead and told a homeowner, you got to take that sign of that Republican candidate out your window. You don't understand. You're promoting someone that could hurt our business, hurt my business. And I mean, I want to help you. So you got to take that sign down, because if there's a new alderman in town, a new Republican in town, we don't get the same pretty deals we get all the time by the Democrat who's been helping us. So it's like they're all in on it. It's crazy, because businesses cannot exist in a ward without being beholden to the alderman. And those businesses have tried, get shut down or closed down, like Raphael Chagan of the 40th Ward, who lost his entire boxing business. 26 years he had been in business, and he lost it because he took a political stance. Or what about Francisco? Francisco owned a grocery store right on Kedzie, right off of Grace Street. Kedzie and Grace, or Kedzie and Byron. And he lost his grocery store after 18 years because he refused to stop passing out Hispanic candidates Republican material. And they had the building inspectors come out. And I remember personally saying to him, why don't you just stop? Because they're not going to stop till they tear you down. And you know what he said to me? He said, Deb, I came from Mexico, where I lost my business and my home and members of my family because of corruption and because of oppression and because of this strong-arm politics. And I come to America, and I'm a citizen here, and I own this Mexican grocery store for 18 years. I'm not going to let them do that to me in America. I looked at him and said, okay, I hope you're right. They shut him down within 6 months. Within 6 months, he was gone. He was beaten. Here was a man who thought he was fighting somebody, but he had the judicial system on his side, that the government, the American government, was on his side, and the corruption locality group there in the 33rd Ward was not going to win, because at the end of the day, he had the government on his side. Well, guess what? The government was on the crook's side, and he lost. And he lost his business. And I don't know where he is, but I'm sure bewildered at the fact that In Mexico, the oppression is probably flat out in your face. They know it and everybody knows it and it's there. And yet here in Chicago, in Cook County, it's a covert thing. It's happening everywhere, but they're very careful to keep their best clothes on and keep their shoes without the mud so nobody knows it's happening. But it's happening. It's happening in our courts. It's happening in the police department. It's happening in the communities. It's happening in the wards. It is horrible. And you need to stop it. And you need to say something. And we could start by doing voter fraud legislation that stops it, reforms it, gives us a voter ID. That's how you could stop it and ensure a more democracy for your children. We need to have voter IDs so that we can keep this country free, so that we can keep each community to have its own representatives represented. Look at what happened in House District 34, and I said we're going to talk about Fatima a little bit, and Fatima's going to come on our show next week, and you'll get a chance to talk to her. The House District 34 is a predominantly black community, more blacks than anything. It was remapped and redistricted to give it a couple of slices of two counties that are predominantly white. But when you look at the black number of black people versus white people, and even Hispanics, it's just slivers. Out of nowhere comes a white guy, and they make it a white-black fight in the 34th House District. And they throw in the voter corruption. Who is best to represent that community? Of course, the black person is best to represent the majority of the black people. She's a conservative, well-educated Republican. There is a God-fearing woman. There is no reason why she wouldn't be great to do the job. Isn't that what we want? We want communities to be represented. Look at your own community. I mean, look at Dick Mell in the 33rd Ward. He makes signs that say Ricardo Mell. What is that supposed to be funny? Because the ward is like over 70% Latino. But you still got the white guy in charge. And look down there at Mike Madigan. Mike Madigan, give me a break. 82% of the people there. You're going to try to tell me that out of every 100 people, you got 82 Latinos and they keep voting for this corrupt white guy? Been there for like 40 years? Tell me there's no voter fraud there. It is heavy. It is rampant. It's not just voter fraud by our government who controls the House in Springfield, our state senators, our state House representatives. They also control the city, and they take up and say, we're going to take in this department, that department, the Board of Ed, the Chicago Transit Authority. So they took over CTA to make it better. Really, is CTA any better? The bunch of routes that are closed? And even the pension mess that they're in? Are the schools any better since the city took it over? Since the Democrat Party took over the school system in Cook County? Is it any better when you gotta ask people to bring their own toilet paper to a public school on the Northwest Side? And that's a white community. Seriously, voter ID, folks, and everybody votes. Everybody go out to vote. Everybody make a call to find out if anybody else voted with your information anywhere else of where you used to live. And 3, vote for voter ID.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello and welcome back. This is Deb Gordills. Okay, so I'm going to get off the subject of voter fraud, voter ID, because it just makes my head want to just pop right off. In closing on the comment, I just want to mention 3 businesses I want you to look into. On the whole, does the City of Chicago Democrat machine take you out as a business owner if you do not pay to play, or if you do not do what they tell you to do, then they're going to eliminate you using the department and the city offices and the city departments and the city courts to take you out as a business owner. So I just want to put out 3 businesses out there. A guy named Raphael Chagin, Chagin. There's a story written about him in the paper. He had a packaging box company. He had that company for about 27 years. Then the city, he started advocating for change in the local government in his ward. He was in Connor's ward, in the 40th ward, I think that was. And I'm not saying Connor had anything to do this or O'Connor had anything to do this. I'm just saying that this guy, Raphael Chagin, is probably in his early 70s right now. He would often say to me in the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't seen him in over a year or so, and I hope he's doing well. But he would often say to me, Debbie, they shut my business down. They closed down my business. It was terrible what they did to me. I didn't go along with them, so they started fining me and putting up, falsified documents that I was in violation of something. And anyway, my very thriving and successful business was taken out. And Raphael, it just broke my heart because sometimes he'd be crying when he talked about it. And so I just think about his business and, the suffering that he had to go through because he didn't go along with the political machine. And I want to say that they covered his story in News Star magazine. I think the publication, dates back August of 2012. But the name of the title of the article was "One Man Crusade Against Brute Violence, Death on Chicago Streets." He's a Rogers Park senior, tired of asking when all of the crime's going to stop, when is all the corruption going to stop. And so he talks about his business and his involvement, and to the best of my knowledge, he never stopped fighting for the things that he knew needed to happen. But he's an example of someone who went against the city of Chicago machine and had their business destroyed and taken down. Another gentleman is in the 33rd Ward. He owned a little grocery store. I want to say it was on the corner of Grace and Kedzie. It was on Kedzie, somewhere between Addison and Irving. Close to, I want to say the street was either Grace or Waveland, where he had his grocery store. His name was Francisco. And I remember in 2003, that's when they shut him down. I think it was 2003, 2004. But I said to him, I know that you want to promote, my candidacy. I was running for alderman at the time, and I had asked him if he would put these little Spanish flyers into his his customers' grocery bags. It was this little Spanish flyer that said, I'm an option to voting for Mel. You can vote for me. I'm going to run for alderman against him. So Mr. Francisco said to me one time when I came in, hey, 3 big gentlemen came in here and said that if I know better, I'm going to do the right thing and not promote your candidacy. And I said, it's the alderman. He's coming after you. So, you know what? You don't have to put my flyers in your bag anymore. I don't want you to get in any kind of trouble. And he looked at me and he said, I came from Mexico. And he goes, and in Mexico, all of this stuff happened. And so I knew if I wanted to get the American dream, I would have to come to the United States of America. And he's like, and I'm a citizen, and I've had my company and my business here for 15 years, and I'm not going to let them do this to me in America. That's what they did in Mexico. They're not going to shut down my business. Don't you worry. You bring me more flyers. So I brought him more flyers, and I asked him how things were going, and he says, well, I'm fighting them in court. I just got 9 more building violations. And he's going to court, and he's going with his lawyer. And I said, okay. Well, the election came and went. And one day, I was going past there, and I saw that his store was closed down. And it broke my heart. And every time I drive down Kedzie Avenue, I think of that man who was standing on principle, this Hispanic Mexican guy who got his citizenship and built a company, and he had a store, and he was doing really well, and he stood on American principles, and they crushed him. They crushed the American dream and the American values and took his business out. And every time I drive down Kedzie, Mel's office is just a couple blocks from where his storefront once stood. And so the reminder there for me is, look, they were able to destroy him. They were able to close down his business because he didn't go along with the machine. You know, we just can't be silent all the time. A lot of people say, oh, Deb, why are you wasting your time and energy talking about, you know, politics or, you know, the injustice of it or how unfair it is. And as far back as I can remember when I was a little kid, it was always about learning to be fair. What is fair and what is just? Always do what is fair. Always help the little guy out. And so I can't stop doing this radio show unless, of course, the FEC that Obama sends over says you guys got to close down because, God forbid, you inform the people of anything that's of any value. But I mean, short of that, I just think, you know, I owe it to Francisco. I owe it to Raphael, the senior citizen in Rogers Park, who was crying in my office saying, you know, please, I just want you to know this has to stop and whatever I could do. I'm like, okay. And so that's what motivates me to continue, is because we have to, there's bad and good elements in the world. There's bad and good elements here in Chicago. And in some small way, I feel like I'm fighting the bad elements in Chicago. I mean, it's not always going to, you know, we're not going to have major successes, but hey, we're going to have a few, and that's going to be great. So, you know, it's about that battle. Last week, I am in Home Depot, and I'm looking to buy some materials. I love hardware stores. And I pick up a conversation with a worker, and the worker says to me, you know, what do you do eventually? And I said, well, I put out a newspaper, Sueño Americano newspaper, and it's a Spanish newspaper giving information to Hispanics. And he says, oh, and I said, and I do a radio show about politics. And he's like, oh, well, maybe, he goes, maybe you can help this guy. He goes, I'm not really quite sure what the story is, but he goes, he's a regular customer, and he's opening up a daycare. He opened up a bunch of successful daycares, and then he opened up a bunch of them downtown. And he goes, I can't remember, it's like ABC Academy or something like that, daycare. And so I went online, and it's actually, I think it's called American Kids Academy. That's the only one I found. But he says there's a set of daycares. He opened up a bunch of them. He was rehabbing them. And one day he said, the mayor sends him a letter. And the letter says you have 30 days to sell your business or we're closing it down. Something to that effect. Now, this is just last week, folks. I mean, here we are, May of 2014. And I said, well, did they give him a reason? Is there a reason why they're going to close him down? I mean, he said, no, they send him a bunch of buyers and told him you have to sell to any one of these people. These people are going to buy your company. I go, and did he sell to them? And he's like, well, he's in the middle of making that decision. But yeah, it looks like he's going to have to sell to these guys or he's going to lose it. Now, these guys are going to let him run it. They're going to let him run it, and he's going to make a percentage of the money, but he's not going to make as much money as if he owned it. And I was like, okay, none of that sounds right, and none of that sounds fair, and none of that sounds just, but it is what it is. So, you know, I mean, are we in America or aren't we? Is this a country where we can, like, create a business and move forward without having it stolen from us? Oh, are we working within a government that can force us to sell or force us to operate in the manner in which they want us to? Or they're going to shut us down, or they're going to sell. I know when I was helping Roger Keats in 2010, when he was running against Tony Preckwinkle in the Cook County board race, we were in Humboldt Park passing out flyers, and Governor Quinn was not even 25 feet away from me. And all of a sudden, two cops show up to three families. There were three families that we were all sitting there passing Roger Keats stuff and told us to stop passing out the postcards. Put them away and stop passing them out, or we're going to have to arrest you. Really? What happened to freedom of speech? And Roger Keats came over and said, what's going on? And then he says, just put them all away. And he wrote a book about it. And he wrote a book about that incident. And he actually talks about it, because I had somebody recently say, Deb, I read about you in a book that Roger Keats wrote, who now lives in Texas because he got the heck out of Illinois. But I mean, we just can't all escape Illinois. I mean, I guess we could all run out from Illinois. But what is really going on here? So here, once again, I'm going to play a recorded show. I'm going to play a couple recorded shows for you, interviews that we've done on numerous topics. And, we're also going to be talking about candidates and the importance of getting candidates elected. We just need to balance out our political system in Chicago. That is the number one thing. We need to balance it out. First thing we need to do is we need to vote Republican just to give a balance into the system. I'm not saying that they're all perfect. I'm not saying that they don't come with some flaws, but we need to balance the system. We cannot continue to operate within a local government that shuts down businesses or forces them to sell or close down if they refuse to do what they want to do. There has to be another place where all of you and I can run to and look for help. Because if we let one group control everything in Chicago or in Illinois like it has been, we're all in trouble. We're all in trouble. So this time, when you're going to vote, and you've seen that guy's name there over and over again for as far back as you can remember your whole voting history, it's time to not vote for them. It's time to vote for the other guy, which is why the Board of Elections works so damn hard to make sure there is no other guy. In Chicago, you're going to see about 60 to 100 elected positions that are going to be running unopposed because the Board of Elections, controlled by the Democrat Party, makes sure there is no other guy, just in case you try to get wise to them, just in case you try to make that vote. I don't know. I wish I had answers. I don't have answers. I just have the gift of gab, I guess. So I'm on the radio. This is Deb Gordills. I'm going to play a pre-recorded show next. You have a great day. And I hope to see you soon. Take care.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello and welcome back to The Bottom Line. This is Deb Gordills, and today we're going to be talking about Chicago. And I'm lucky enough to have Scott Davis on the phone. I'm almost holding him captive to stay on the phone and do the show with me. Scott, welcome back.
Deb, thanks for having me again.
Thank you. On the last show, you had talked about Chicago. Chicago was a different bird. I mean, a lot of people who run Republican campaigns, who run gubernatorial campaigns, who run statewide races, don't understand how to win in Chicago because they don't understand how Chicago operates. So maybe you could help us here because there are 50 wards in Chicago, 50 neighborhoods that hold 50 aldermen in there. Those are the ward bosses. They're the Ed Burke, the Dick Mell, the whatever. These guys all control those areas. And in each ward, in each of these 50 wards, they're numbered 1 to 50 in the city of Chicago. They each have a committeeman that belongs to each political party. A Democrat committeeman and a Republican committeeman. Scott Davis is the committeeman for the 44th ward out of the 50 numbers, number 44. Now, talk to the people on why it's so important for us to continue to find good Republican people or good conservatives or good libertarians to run as Republicans to win the committeeman's seat in Chicago.
Well, I think this, and I love your question because it's so important, and this is the key to a major reason why our Republican Party is just not effective in this state, and it has to do with Chicago. And it's a little counterintuitive because people just don't believe that there are any Republicans in Chicago, and in fact there are. And there's enough to swing a major campaign like a governor race in a primary, because 4% of the vote, roughly 4% of the Republican vote, is going to be from Chicago. Anyway, just to back up a little bit on your setup, there are 50 wards in the city, as you said, and each ward has a Republican and a Democrat committeeman. And those committeemen are elected in a primary election during the presidential primaries every 4 years. So as committeeman, I was elected back in 2012 in March, and that was the same time when Mitt Romney was running for Republican president in the Illinois primary. So my counterpart is Tom Tunney, who is the Democrat committeeman in the same boundaries in the 44th ward. Similarly, since wards are the political designation, they're the political the way the map is drawn in the city, there is an alderman position in the city of Chicago for every ward as well. And those aldermen, those 50 aldermen, make up the Chicago City Council. So I just wanted to sort of give some background on what the political action is in each of these 50 wards. Why is it important to have a Republican organization or Republican Party that functions in the city of Chicago? Well, it really boils down to the leadership of the state party. To back up a little bit, how is the leadership of the state party organized? There is an elected board member, really, a central committeeman member for the state party that's elected in each congressional district in Illinois. In Illinois, we have 18 congressional districts. Each one has a position called State Central Committeeman that serve on the Central Committee of the Illinois Republican Party. Those people are elected by the precinct committeemen, the people at the local level that I was talking about previously, who run to be the Republican in their precinct. That is the sort of advantage of being a precinct captain, is that you have a voice in who gets elected to the party leadership.
Okay, but that is all outside the city. Yeah, but that's all out of the city. So now I'm bringing you back in to Chicago, right? Because Chicago is where our show isn't even heard in Chicago. So these people get what you say about precinct committeemen, how that works. Let's get back to Chicago. Chicago does not work like that. Chicago is separate. What you have is you have an alderman. You have 50 wards. So when you think of Chicago, you have to count from 1 to 50. And then each number represents a neighborhood, a community, an area. And that has that alderman there is supposed to be a nonpartisan position, but all 50 aldermen are Democrats. They are known Democrats. They vote Democrat. They support Democrats. So the city of Chicago has a mayor, and then it has 50 neighborhoods that make up that city council, and all 50 of them, although it's a bipartisan position, all 50 of them are held by strong Democrats. Then within that, each one of those 50 wards, you have those 50 neighborhood wards, you have a committeeman, a Republican committeeman, a Democrat committeeman. Now, here's the most important thing. Everybody used to say to me 5 years ago, when I first started in Chicago, Deb, what is the difference? Why is it so? No committeeman gets paid. It's a non-paying job. Why is it so important? And I said, number one is that the committeeman in that ward gets together with neighboring wards, and when a Republican candidate is kicked off the ballot and is not allowed on, they get a second chance to get together and vote somebody to go onto the ballot for the general election. They get to slate somebody. And that was always really easy because there was no signature attached to it. All you needed was the committeemen to get together and decide they wanted a guy, and they would run and have a candidate there. And the candidate would have to be accepted by the Board of Elections. So the Democrats knew that this was dangerous. So they changed the legislation in Springfield and created laws that allowed Chicago to operate differently. And what they did was they took Democrat voters within each ward and moved them over to vote as Republicans, and the Democrats would run their own candidate for committeeman who was really a Democrat, and then they'd win the seat. And so really what you had in Chicago when I came on board 5 years ago, out of 50 Republican ward committeemen, I only found 4 or 5 guys that were really Republican. All the others, close to 45, 46 of them, were Democrats. My first notice when Jack Roser asked me to go in there was to his exact words, "I want nothing short of a hostile takeover of the Republican Party, beginning with these committeeman seats in Chicago," which I thought, wow, what a militant. You think you and I are considered Republican militants. Jack Roser, I swear, he pounded on the desk and he said really firmly, "I want nothing short of a hostile takeover of the Republican Party in Chicago, starting with the committeemen." I'll never forget that. It was so impressed in my mind. And I thought, here's a millionaire who's stomping his hand, he's saying, "This is what I want." And I said, okay. And I said, "I'll see what I can do." And so then began, the first thing we did is we gave public notice that Jack Roser wanted to run Republican committeemen in Chicago to replace the committeemen that were there. And you could go back to record and see how many resignations came. Almost a dozen immediate resignations were turned in to Lee Rupes, who was the sitting Cook County chairman at the time. It was unbelievable. It was like that statement by Jack Roser, public statement that we made public, that he said hostile takeover Republican committeemen. It was like all the Republican committeemen who had any sense of self-respect got the hell out of there fast before we started throwing dirt at them. And they resigned because they were homeowners. They had children in the neighborhood schools. They were invested in their community. The last thing they needed to do was have somebody pass out flyers in their neighborhood, in their ward, saying, "This guy's a scam. He's not a real Republican. He's got a straight Democrat voting record." One Republican, even, I think it was the 40th ward, I'm not quite sure which ward, he was wearing an Obama button on Election Day. The Republican ward committee. I know, because his next door neighbor's kid went to school with my kid, and she was a diehard Republican, and she was disgusted that the Republican committeeman was wearing an Obama button. Well, he resigned too. He was one of the first ones to resign. So Lee Rupes said, "I got all these people." We called him into a meeting. He said, "I got all these people that are resigning. We got to replace them with good Republicans." And I just said to him, "Okay, you got the list of the 50 Republican committeemen here. I got 46 that are showing up as Democrats. So we know we got to get rid of those 46. And I said, and now you have a bunch of resignations. So we got at least a dozen of those out of the way. Can you start to tell me who we have to really target? I mean, where is it really, really bad? Where can we find people?" And then we just started putting out a flyer to everybody and their mother. I think that's actually when you came on board, and you were running for committeeman of the 44th Ward during that time. You know that we were out recruiting and trying to run all kinds of candidates. As a matter of fact, a libertarian friend of yours, Marty Phelan, we got him in, and he won.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, you helped Marty. Jack funded the defense of his nominating petitions, which were challenged, and an ethics court or Board of Elections review. A guy named Wayne Eisel and a couple others were able to restore Marty's signatures enough to keep Marty on the ballot. And Marty actually had an opponent by who was running against him by the name of I'm trying to remember her name and stuff. And Merlinda Lula Firestein, and she. Interesting enough, on her campaign Facebook page, she posted a picture of herself with Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky who's probably the most liberal Democrat in the Congress of the United States. And she put this picture on her Republican campaign webpage.
You see, that's how brazen it was. That's how crazy it was.
So we took that picture and put it on a postcard and said, what the heck is this? Yeah, and we won that election by 56% to 33%.
But you know what? And thank God. And this is what I was talking about. You know, I think we were involved in over 31 races, in committeeman races. In the history of Chicago Republican committeeman activity, there were never that many Republican committeemen on the ballot to run for Republican committeemen historically in Chicago. It was.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got to do it again in 2 years because we can do even better, and we can build this party into a real functioning party. We've taken huge steps the last 2 years. We actually have some candidates on the ballot for state rep, which has been unheard of in the last decade. Thanks for the hard work of people like you, Deb, and others within the party. We have, I believe, 7 or 8 candidates for state rep in the city of Chicago, and we even have one candidate for Senate who's running against John Cullerton.
Yeah, you know what? That is, I'm happy to see that that it's growing and it's happening. You know, I would love to see 10, 15, 20, 30 more, but you and I know that the Board of Selections works against us, works against average people getting on the ballot. We really need to run and vet and slate somebody to run against Cook County David Orr's office, because David Orr controls 120 places where voting occurs, and he also controls the Board of Elections. And I tell you, the first thing I would do if I ran against David Orr, my first day in office, I'd dissolve the Board of Elections. There would be no Cook County Board of Elections. You just come right up to my office there at the Cook County Clerk's office, stamp a sheet, pay me a fee, because this damn state's broke anyway, and so's the county, and you're on the ballot. There were 21 people running in a ballot on the East Coast, and it went just perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's this policy of getting the signatures. You know, it's one way of doing it, but it's designed, and the Democrats change the rules all the time to change the signature requirements. It's designed to keep people from getting on the ballot. It's designed to discourage people from participating in the Democrat process.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And, you know, what are we going to do about it? We need to do something. We need to keep fighting. We need to keep getting good people like yourself, Scott, and Marty Phelan, and Suzanne Devan, and she's another one we got elected.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello, and welcome back to The Bottom Line. I wish that Scott could have stayed on the line with us, but he had to get back to work. He has just been an absolute blessing to all the Republican activity on the north side. He's responsible for vetting candidates and supporting candidates and working to improve the Wrigley Field area, not just for Cub fans, as you heard, through supporting projects that will be a better development project for the community. But he also addresses those speed light cameras and the red light cameras. And Scott did not get an opportunity to give you his website or his phone number, but I know that you could find Scott in the 44th Ward Republicans. So if you Google 44th Ward Republicans, Scott Davis, you'll get an email number where you can email him and a phone number where you can call him. You can also reach Scott Davis on Campaign for Liberty's website. He is the Illinois Campaign for Liberty director, and there's many different counties where they have, or chapters, where they have members in case you're interested in joining Campaign for Liberty. So, it's been a pleasure having him on the show, and I'm grateful that he came here, and hopefully we'll get him on the show again. He's got a lot of important information. But what did we get out of today's show? Number one, that red light cameras and now speed cameras in Chicago is only a revenue maker. It has nothing to do with safety. It has nothing to do with protecting the citizens. And it brings in $160 million to the city council and the mayor to spend the way they want. And so when they sit down and they create these plans, really what their city council is doing is they're paying people to come up with ideas on how they can get more of our money. How can they get more of our money? And so, I don't know about the rest of you, but we are so overtaxed. We are so overtaxed, one of the highest taxed citizens in the country right here in Illinois, and especially in Cook County. And we need to address this, and we need to ask our legislators to vote against it. We need to vote for candidates that hold the line on taxes. I know that there's many organizations like the Taxpayers Foundation, which supports issues relating to keeping the tax down, and we need to support candidates who say they're going to hold the line on taxes. So it's been an interesting show in that we had an opportunity to talk about Rand Paul and Ron, his father, Ron Paul. And who knows what's going to happen in 2016 with the presidency. We might see, I think that it would be in the best interest of this country with the numbers to have a Republican Latino candidate like Ted Cruz. And he's a, freshman senator, so he may feel that it's too early to come out. But I don't think it's ever too early to come out as a leader. Look at what zero experience and zero accomplishment President Obama had as a U.S. senator. I think he was only a few months into being a U.S. senator when he announced his run for presidency. And he was a state senator here in Chicago. We didn't even know about him. We didn't even hear about him. You'd think with a name like Barack Obama, somebody would have heard about him or anything. So he sort of went under the radar here until he ran for president. And so I think that the Democratic Party is going to have a serious problem on its hand finding someone who's credible that could regain the trust of the Democrat voters. Democrat voters are sick and tired of the lies. Democrat voters are sick and tired of the taxes. Democrat voters are sick and tired of hearing that they want to help the poor and women, but not seeing any results. When you have Republican conservatives giving 30% more in charitable contributions out of their own personal pocket to take care of the overwhelming majority of Democrat voters, and their own party isn't doing that for them, and their own party is trying to just spend the money that they tax them on. So really, when you get that red light ticket or speeding ticket through those cameras, and you give that money to the government will give you back that money maybe in food stamps or unemployment or something else. So they're not helping you. You're helping yourself. For that, you might as well keep the money and do better for yourself. So it's kind of a cycle we need to break out of, because if you don't break out of this cycle of voting for people who are going to continue to tax you, only to tax you so that you could fight with them to try to get a percentage of that back. This is insanity. This is a crazy cycle. So we want to know that Democrat voters need to reevaluate their candidates. Look at who you voted for. Find out what they represent. What did they vote for? And this is public record. I mean, you could Google them. You could Google in Springfield, the legislative department, and find out how they voted. What was the roll call on the vote? Who voted yes and who voted no? And so I know last night at the conservative town hall, one of the things that they were saying was that Dick Durbin, a Democrat, voted over and over again against an immigration bill and against an immigration proposal of any kind, because he did not want to address immigration. And so this is not something that's a lot of people talk about. And so we really need to reevaluate the politicians.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and